All right, in this lesson here, what we're going to do is show you how we can take a skeleton that we've created ourselves, in other words, a custom skeleton, and simply apply HumanIK to it. It's not a hard thing, but there are a couple rules that you need to remember.
Sure.
So here's our little bingo, right?
Yeah.
Looks just like you, Joel.
Yeah, it sort of does.
And what we want to do, it's a custom-built skeleton that looks similar to the BodyGenerator one, but we want to go ahead and apply HumanIK. We don't have an initialize button that we can hit or anything like that. So what we need to do first is go ahead and put HumanIK into the scene, which at first is going to be represented as just an icon. So I've already shown you where we can get it from, so let's just go ahead and come up here to HumanIK and create HumanIK. And that's it. No, nothing really fancy there, and we don't have no IK or FK. That's because we have not characterized our skeleton.
So now it's really not affecting anything at all.
That's right. So let's go ahead and come over here to the modifier panel. And now from the modifier panel, take a look. These other two modes that we talked about in the previous lesson, they're currently grayed out. We can't get to them. That's because we can't retarget animation right now because there's not been a character currently defined with this HumanIK. And we can't get over here and start working with FK-IK solvers because, again, we don't have a character. We need to get the rig available first, and the only way we can get the rig is when Characterize has been activated successfully. So how do we pull this off? Well, basically, you need to have a series of bones in here that are required. You have to have hips, left up leg, left floor, etc., all the way down. There's not a whole lot of them, but you have to have these guys for this rig to work. That's kind of rule number one. Rule number two, your character or your skeleton must be in the T-stance pose. Otherwise, when the HumanIK gets applied and actually initialized so that you have FK and IK, you could end up with a mess, and things can start breaking. So you got to be in a T-stance pose. And finally, you need to be facing in the Y axis. Okay, don't turn your character along X or something really strange, have him laying down on his back facing up in Z. You don't want to do that.
That's an important thing.
So what we need to do is go ahead and come over here first and meet the requirements of the bones. And it's real simple. This isn't a naming thing here. This is just a matter of using these pick buttons. You'll notice right now if I leave my mouse over top of any of these buttons for a second or so, I get a little pop-up that tells me none. That's because at the moment there has been no bone over here assigned for the right up leg. So let's just start up here with hips, and I'll just simply click the pick button, and it's just a standard 3ds Mac pick button, so in other words it stays pressed in until you pick something. So I'll go ahead and pick my hips. And then this is going to take me a second to do this, so in the meantime, Joel's going to just dance for everybody.
Yeah.
So we'll come over here to left up leg, left foot. Now, when I click these, first thing I want you to notice is the name does not appear over here. They're very long names, and that would look really bad on the buttons.
Yeah, there's really no room.
But what does happen is look what happens when you leave the mouse over it. The little pop-up tooltip type thing now tells you what is assigned there. So be real careful not to accidentally assign something that's wrong, and if you do, you can check it here. But here's how you know what gets assigned. Pay attention to what you click over here. It responds the same way as if you were linking objects. In other words, it will flash white for a second. Watch. Click, white, click. Okay? So right up leg. Or excuse me. Yes, right up.
Yeah,
I was thinking toes. No, toes are optional. We'll get to those in a minute. Okay, so right up leg, here we go. I click it, it flashes white for a second, it goes away.
Assigned.
That's it. So let's go ahead and scroll down to about right here. So right leg, we'll go ahead and grab this one. And right foot, let's go ahead and grab right foot. Aha! What just flashed for our right foot? So I'll move over this, and look at that. I actually got the HumanIK icon. Be really careful with this. Perhaps I may want to rotate around a little bit
just to be sure you get the right
selecting
one.
Easier. Absolutely. So right foot, pick, and we can simply reassign. It's not a problem. So now we're on our way up here to the top, and it's time to start putting in our other parts. So we've got our feet, so you can see he's assigned, our legs. This guy's assigned, so we'll come down here to spine, which is currently none. So we'll grab our first spine bone right there. Then we'll grab our left arm. Then we'll grab our left forearm. And then just coming down a little bit lower, we'll go ahead and grab our left hand. Moving on over to the other side, we'll go ahead and pick our right arm, pick our right forearm, and pick our right hand. Now we scroll down just a little bit further, and all we're left with is the head. So we'll pick the head. And at this point, that's all we need to characterize our character, but we've got a few extra bones in here that are optional. So down up under the optional grouping section down here, you can see we've got reference, left floor, and right floor. We'll talk about these in just a minute. But we come down here to auxiliary. Look at this. We got auxiliary, spine, roll, left hand, right hand. So let's use some of these. Auxiliary, we can find our left toe, right toe, our shoulders, and our neck. And we have all of these, actually, in this particular case. So let's go ahead and come down here, and that's going to represent our toes, these two guys down here. So we'll just go ahead and grab left toes and select. Go ahead and grab right toes and select. Now let's go ahead and cruise on up here for the shoulders, basically where your collarbones would be. So our left shoulder, our right shoulder, and our neck. Okay, so the only thing left I really have is a couple spine bones. So let's just go ahead and switch this on over to spine. And then from spine, we've got spine 1, 2, 3, and so on and so forth, all the way up to 9. You can have a total of 10 spine bones in all. Now remember, this was the first spine, and it is not considered spine 1. Just consider it as the first spine. So this would be spine 1. Do not make the mistake of messing this up right here, because then you would have an unassigned spine, or you can end up causing problems when this thing becomes initialized or characterized. So we'll just go ahead and pick spine 1, and we'll pick spine 2. Okay. Now, if we had, fingers and et cetera, then we could start going into all our left hand, right hand, et cetera. But we don't have that, so we're not going to worry about it. Now, reference. If you wanted to add in a helper, let's say a point helper, and make that your reference where you can take the point helper and easily move the entire character any way you wanted to, then you can do that, and then you can simply say pick that object as your reference. Just make sure that what you do is you take your hips and link your hips to that helper. They need to be a child of your reference object if you have a reference object in there. And final thing, let's go ahead and come over here, as a matter of fact, just for a second to a top view to make this a little easier. And I'm going to come back up to standard primitives, and let's create a little floor for him to walk on. So something like such. And we'll go ahead and let's move it on down below the grid, because we've already seen in previous lessons how the grid, let's go and change the color to something a little different here. Yeah, maybe like that. But basically the grid usually serves as the floor. It's what our foot contact collides with.
Default floor.
So yeah, let's actually assign something else. And we can assign both left and right. So we can handle these independently, which is really cool. Let's do that now. I'll simply select this. Come back over here again to the motion panel, and we are still on the define mode. That's the only one we can get to right now. I'll come down here to the optional section, and we'll go ahead and say left floor, pick. Right floor, pick. Okay. At this point, I'm happy with how I've got everything set up, and I'm now ready to simply see if I can characterize this. So let's just go ahead and back them away and check characterize. If we have any problems, it will let you know what is not assigned. In this case, it looked like everything worked without any problems. I can already see my yellow FK cruising through right there. And if I slide back up, the checkbox is now checked. I now have initial pose and clear animation buttons available, which will basically allow me to, if I come in here and move the character, as a matter of fact, I can show you by coming over here to the FKIK solver now, which is available.
Very nice.
And I can grab this guy right here and move him into some sort of position. And then if I want to come back over here to define, maybe I want to go into initial pose because I'm making some sort of adjustments to my weighting or to something else, and I need to be in that original T-stance pose. I can make these adjustments, but you'll notice that right now the initial pose button is staying pressed in. Okay? You'll also notice that our FK is still down there. Not only is our FK down there, our IK is down there as well.
So it's sort of just a temporary mode?
It is a temporary state. Let's go ahead and jump back over here, pretend we're now done, come out of initial pose, and you'll see that we now snap back to where we should be at that particular point. Well, this is pretty cool, though, because if you have animation on your character at any time, you can say, snap, go back to initial pose, let me make some adjustments, snap, jump back into your animation, which is very handy. Okay? So let's see. Some things we can do real quickly. Clear animation is simply just going to clear out animation on any of the bones that have been involved in the characterize. If you've got bones that are involved, or not been characterized, but that are linked in or something, their animation will stay in place. Okay? So in this case, the last thing I want to look at is just the floor part real quick. So let's go ahead and come over here and let's just select some of these guys. So we'll select, 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 select. And let's see where we're going to collide this time around. So we come in here, we move up, we move down, through the
doesn't
grid.
go through the grid.
And look at that. Oh, but no, look at the foot's halfway going through. If you said that, I'm going to say, watch the last lesson because I already covered this.
Right.
Watch this. I'm just going to simply put my foot right about there, come over here to my advanced parameters again, and then simply come over here to my foot bottom to ankle, click over here in the value selection, and adjust my foot contacts until they represent where the bottom of my foot would be, which would be right there. Simply close this out. Now let's move up, down, and look how much nicer that is.
Very cool.
So the whole idea of this lesson right here is just to tell you or show you how you can take a custom skeleton that you've created yourself out of bones and then apply HumanIK to it. The whole thing takes place over here inside the define mode. It's all about characterization. You've got to make sure that you've got the required bones. There's no getting around that. You've got to have these. Then you have a bunch of optional settings, optional bones that you can assign as well. Then you simply characterize it. And with that, that's going to conclude this lesson. So thanks, everyone.